7 days. We're back again for another episode of Dominant Effect. I'm Archbishop. We got Mike Ball, Aaron Olinger. What's up, everybody? Glad you was able to tune in. We got a pretty good one. Like I said, it seemed like every week's a pretty good one because there's so much stuff going on that
Yeah.
try to catch as much as we can catch. I mean, some stuff we pretty much can call, some stuff we kind of scratching your head about. Uh, that's some of the stuff that we're diving into. So we're going to jump into the story tonight. But before we get started, everybody hit that like button. Um, that's what gets the show out on a proper algorithm, and more people can be able to see what it is that we're putting out. Um, so, like I said, to the ones that just kicked in, welcome to the Dominant Effect, where we don't just follow the narrative, we follow the evidence. And our goal in this show is not to tell you what to think, but to examine the facts, follow the evidence, and you decide for yourself what it is that you need to go with. And tonight's show is important because we're going to connect two major developments that normally would be discussed separately, but they do kind of fall in line with each other. So we're gonna dive into both of them. Now, the first one that we have is Iran, and the Trump administration promised what it called a economic D-Day against Tehran on the 24th of August. And Secretary Scott Bessent announced sanctions against roughly 60 Iran-linked individuals, companies, vessels, and networks. But perhaps the most important than the sanctions themselves was the warning sent to the rest of the world. That countries continuing significant economic relations with Iran could eventually face American secondary sanctions. At the same time, the Strait of Hormuz remains severely disrupted. Fewer than 20 commodity vessels reported across the strait over the weekend, while Iran says that it has blacklisted 45 tankers accused of violating new transit rules and has threatened fines, detentions, and confiscation. The second part of this story is that now we have Canada. And trade negotiations only a few days ago were described as being very close to an agreement, and it totally collapsed. And the U.S. has now imposed 50% tariffs and roughly $20 billion in Canadian products. And President Trump has threatened to extend 50% tariffs to Canadian cars, trucks, auto parts beginning January 1st of 27. And Canada said that it will retaliate. And since then, they have also stated that they was going to put tariffs on their stuff, on American stuff as well. Kind of, just basically a tit for tat thing right now. So both of these aren't small stories. They affect the oil, the cars, food, manufacturing, interest rates, international alliances, and potentially what Americans pay every single day. So we're going to break down exactly what's happening, and more importantly, where could it go next? So, so we're going to start with this economic D-Day. So when the administration talked about this economic D-Day, some people expected the United States to immediately unleash every possible financial weapon against Iran that it could. That didn't happen. Instead, the Treasury announced sanctions against approximately 60 Iranian-linked individuals that entitles vessels connected to the area, including the Iran oil trade, missiles and nuclear programs, technology, shipping, and other financial networks. But Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent also delivered what may prove to be a much bigger warning, and that was that the United States is essentially telling foreign governments, banks, and companies that if you continue to have this relationship with Iran and maintain the status quo that you've been doing, then they're going to in turn turn around and put secondary sanctions on them. And that's important for everybody watching to kind of understand exactly what these secondary sanctions are. Um, so that means that an American company cannot do business with an Iranian company. Uh, but it goes a lot further than that because it can effectively say that even if you are Chinese, Turkish, um, um, or belong to any foreign country whatsoever, if you conduct these certain business agreements with Iran, the United States will sanction you too. And because uh, so much international commerce goes back and forth through U.S. dollar, American banks and American markets, um, exclusion from the U.S. financial system can be devastating. And that's where America kind of reels in the economic power in that point, because the United States does have to physically prevent every transaction. And they can make companies ask themselves, is doing business with Iran particularly worth going through all this excess stuff with America? Now, the Treasury Secretary didn't immediately impose these secondary sanctions on Monday when he was talking about it. He said that countries were being given time to change their behavior. And a lot of them have reported that major Chinese financial institutions involved in Iranian commerce were notably absent from the sanction list. So a lot of the questions that have popped up is like, okay, so what about China? And we know that China has a big deal dealing with Iran. They get 80% of their oil from Iran, and they have numerous businesses where they have um, commerce commerce back and forth. So when they're talking about these secondary sanctions, are they going to actually go after China as well? So what's your take on that, Aaron?
Oh shoot, he's muted. Hold on one sec. There you go. You're good
Okay.
now,
There you
Aaron.
go.
Sorry.
All right. I was going to say, they're not going to have a choice. But let me give you a little background of what got this whole thing started. Iran signed a deal with Oman, and the deal had basically 3 points to it. And I'm going to read them to you. This deal bans American and Israeli vessels outright from coming through the Strait of Hormuz. And Oman signed that. Violators, or anyone that's associated with us, violator ships will face fines of up to 20% of the value of their cargo that they are carrying. So anybody coming through there that's associated with us is going to have to pay 20% of the value of their cargo. Any nation that is deemed to have caused war damage to Iran, and I'm going to use Great Britain as example because they let us use their air bases, will be denied passage until Iran receives full compensation for war damages. And that means no ships bound for U.S., no ships bound for Britain, Israel, anybody else that Iran wants to. And again, Oman signed it. Iran deputy minister said that this understanding does not mean the full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. So
Right.
even with this going on, that don't mean that they're going to fully reopen it. They're going to be very specific who they're going to allow to come through there. Then Iran, and this is their strategy, Iran is turning a wartime closure into permanent law. And because of that, Trump came back with the economic war package. And then when Iran heard that, then Iran announced Monday that anyone siding with the United States is going to get cyber attack, missiles, and drones. And then we said that anyone siding with Iran is going to get high tariffs and sanctions in return. And everyone was given 48 hours to decide whose side they were going to pick. And that 48 hours ends today. So I'm
That's
curious to
right.
see the lineup of where everybody's going to go.
No kidding.
But
I'm gonna be doing the same exact thing, watching it every moment.
but what
Um,
Bishop said about the financing and the military might. Right now, Trump is using everything, our markets, our money, our military might, everything that we can leverage
Yes.
to gain an edge right now. And we're going to need it with what's coming ahead. And everybody out there listening to this, you better be ready to tighten your belts because pain is coming. And I'll stop there.
That's right.
Let me ask you this, Aaron.
Yeah.
So do you think, now this is just your personal opinion based off the stuff that
Yeah.
you looked up, okay? So do you think that the U.S. can isolate Iran without simultaneously forcing these major powers like China and Russia to keep them from having a confrontation with the U.S.?
No. And the reason for it is the BRIC alliance. The whole BRIC alliance was set up to circumvent the SWIFT system and the American dollar. So Iran is still going to have trading partners, but how much trade do we do with them? How much trade do they do with us? Can we leverage our markets against them and not give them access without them paying fines and sanctions and tariffs? Or, or do we need them more than they need us? I mean, that's what it's going to come down to right now when we're seeking leverage. So everybody in that BRIC alliance, and I think there's close to 42 or 44 nations that are signing on. You can just about bet they're going to be all on Iran's side, and they amount for 40% of the world's 40 to 44% of the world's GNP right now, and that's considerable.
Mm-hmm. I was saying that I was asking you that question because I thought that, just by the basic threat that was put out there as to, what's going to happen. But I think by targeting China and targeting Chinese banks would be far more consequential than sacrificing a small intermediary, country, because China has an enormous role in actual global trade and finance. So
Sure.
I think DC has to balance pressure on Iran against the risk of targeting or triggering a much wider U.S.-China confrontation. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of like when you look at it, it's like, okay, like that's a broad threat, and the threat was put out to everyone. So that's one of them sections where it's like, okay, so you said that you're going to do this to me. Okay, so we're going to do this, and I'm going to see what you do. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Kind of like basically calling the bluff, which we know from talking about this for a while. Several of these countries have been known for calling the bluff.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then we've seen, like, once they come to that deadline, then they turn around and say, well, oh, we're just going to extend it a little bit more, give everybody a little bit more time, whatever. But that's been one of the things that's kind of hurt us in a way, because when you make these deadlines and they push it all the way to the limit and still don't do it, and then instead of you actually enforcing what you said you was going to do, you back off of it, and then you push it back again. So they just keep doing it. You know what I mean? So eventually, though, you're going to figure that something like this is going to take place, and you're going to give that deadline, and they thinking that they're going to call you bluff again, but this time you're not bluffing, and you actually do something to them. You know what I mean? Then they're going to cry foul because you did it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a damn if you do, damn if you don't situation. But if you put it out that way, and if you put threats out, you got to be willing to back it up. You know what I mean? So I think we've come to that point in time where the bluff is over. You know what I mean? You either gonna shit or get off the pot, 1 to 2. You know what I mean? If you're gonna keep making these bluffs, then stop. You know what I mean? Like stop saying stuff that you know you're not gonna do. You know what I mean? So if you're gonna actually do it, then do it. Mm-hmm. But I think that if they push this deal, what they're talking about with China, they're gonna lose.
In the regards to economic D-Day and
right.
What it's okay.
Right.
So that's exactly what I was going to get into as well. And if you don't mind, I would like to show one thing that I did I clipped it up today from to yesterday morning's show. Anyways, real quick, it's only about 40 seconds, and then I'll get into my dialogue real quick. So hold on, maybe turn on the volume where you can actually see how this is going to affect China. Again, this is the biggest thing that I'm watching for, is making sure how it's going to affect China. China buys 80% of Iran's oil. All Iranian exports of oil, 80% of it goes to China. Okay. So if we basically do these secondary sanctions and all this shit, and now we're going after the trade partners that are still continuing to trade with Iran, which would be China, how is China going to go ahead and respond to that? Even China, Reuters put out a thing yesterday that we reported on and says, we are absolutely going to be watching this, and we will adjust accordingly, right?
Only two paths before them: complete global isolation and a subsistence economy, or a path back to normalcy with an opportunity to rejoin the global economy. Today, we are launching Operation Economic Outcast to foreclose every other option available to the Iranian regime.
Okay, and so that leads me kind of basically into my dialogue into tonight. We're not just talking about one sanction or one tariff. We're watching money itself become a weapon. The United States has officially launched Operation Economic Outcast, as you guys just saw there, a whole of government campaign designed to track and sever every network Iran uses to sell oil, move money, and evade sanctions. But Iran doesn't have to defeat the United States military to retaliate. On Tuesday, only 5 commodity vessels crossed through the Strait of Hormuz, while Iran has now blacklisted 45 ships and threatened detention, fines, and even cargo seizures. Iran doesn't have to completely close Hormuz. It only has to make shipping companies and insurers, refiners, too afraid or too expensive to use it. Then look north. Trump has threatened 50% tariffs on Canadian cars, trucks, and auto parts beginning January 1st. Canada is answering by raising tariffs on American steel and aluminum to 50% beginning of September 8th. And here's the bombshell. American and Canadian supply chains are so intertwined that automotive parts can cross the border multiple times before one vehicle is completed. So who is ultimately paying for this economic warfare? The government pulls the triggers, but the battlefield reaches your gas pumps, your dealerships, your grocery bill, and your wallet. Sadly.
Mm-hmm.
Be ready for it. Prepare yourself. Exactly what we talk about every week here.
Right. And that's what Aaron was talking about earlier about dealing with the Strait. They do have, I'm talking about Iran, they do have a way that they could put the squeeze on everybody, and they know that. And when you putting out a 48-hour notice where, okay, everybody got to decide whose team you on, either you on my team or you on their team. A lot of these countries you have to think about are almost tank bottom when it comes to oil. They're rationing right now. Some of them are only using oil for military and government vehicles, law enforcement, etc. They're doing like over in the Philippines, they got their little blackout times that they shut everything down to try to conserve as much as possible.
Yeah.
So
there's multiple places like that.
Right. So what you asking someone to do and take your side, then the first thing they asking is like, okay, so if we take your side, what are you going to do for us? Are you sending stuff over here to us so that way that,
right,
you know what I mean, that we don't have to worry about them? You know what I mean? Because if it's just simply, just take your side, or you going to give me a tariff, and they like, okay, I can get a tariff over here, but shit, I'm not worried about a tariff right now. I need oil.
Right.
No, you know what I mean? And
I need
how
energy.
And how am I going to get that? You know what I mean? So at one point, a tariff doesn't mean a damn thing if you can't power your vehicles, or you can't make your products, or you can't have energy. You know what I mean? So that's not a easy choice to make. You know what I mean? So something's going to have to be done there, and it is not going to be as easy as everybody thinks. You know what I mean? I think there's going to come a point in time that we're going to have to eat crow here, because you're not going to be able because you're not going to be able to do what you say you're going to do. Yeah, it sounds good when you're talking about it. It sounds good to the ordinary person that don't know none of this shit.
Yeah, it
Ain't
sounds
do
good on
no-
paper originally, right?
Right. Don't do no investigation on this. Don't know absolutely nothing about it. Yeah, it sounds good. But when you get to the brass tacks and look at exactly what's going on and what you stand to lose by doing this, I don't see a lot of these countries backing this. I just don't see it. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, let me talk about 3 military actions that's occurred in the last 48 hours that affects the economy of the world right now. Today, or rather last night, Israel just bombed Iran's South Par natural gas field. That's the largest natural gas field in the world. It creates 75% of natural gas production. 80% of Iran's electric grid is powered by natural gas. That right now, the nation has no energy because Iran has bombed, not Iran, but Israel bombed it, and they have shut it down. Now, Iran has vowed to retaliate for this attack. The U.S. has condemned the attack publicly, but behind the scenes, the U.S. gave permission for that attack. And that attack was done to collapse Iran's electric grid and collapse their currency.
It sounds about right
was the
about how
goal.
we played that.
Right. Then Iran ended up, while that was going on, Iran carried out a drone attack on the UAE's oil refinery called Adnoc Ruwaz. And that's supposed to be the largest oil refinery in the Middle East. It is now closed. It's the 4th largest refinery in the world, and oil prices are rising because of the attacks on the oil refineries. Now, Saudi Arabia, remember when they tried to bribe the United States, they was going to pay for the whole war?
Yep.
If we took this deal and we decide not to take it. Well, they've used their influence and their money, and they've announced a 14-nation defense alliance. They formed their own NATO, basically. Some of the people that's involved is Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, and Jordan has signed on. But they got 14 nations that have signed on. The coalition will protect shipping in the Red Sea. So they're not even going to try to go through the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to try to get around the Houthis. Now, the Houthis are preparing to charge, it's claimed the Houthis are preparing to charge a fee for shipping to go through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Now, the Houthis today said that they didn't say that, but that's the reports, and they are still threatening to shut the strait down. The alliance is prepared to go to war. The Saudis are going to lead them, and they're going to go to war against the Houthis. You're going to have 14 nations coming against some mountain boys, rebels that are funded and equipped by Iran. And they're talking about starting to bomb Yemen. And if the war breaks out, Iran is not going to be able to protect the Houthis. So I don't know what's going to happen if Yemen is going to become a proxy, like Syria right now is a failed state, and Turkey wants Syria to be a part of them, and they're moving all these weapons into Syria, and Israel's bombing stuff over there, and Turkey's threatening to go to war with them. I mean, things is moving. Markets are going to be affected. Stock market's going to be affected. Now, today, the markets seemed okay, but you could tell there's a quiet nervousness and a little lack of trust. Nobody is jumping all in right now.
That's right.
But things are going to get interesting between now and next week, that's for sure.
Aaron, you were totally right about how the way that you explained it as well, because it is known right now as a Middle East NATO, you know,
Right.
And I think it's what, 14 countries right now? 14?
Yeah, 14.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I also saw in the reports.
Yeah. Oman is so scared of Iran, they won't sign on. But
well, just like how Saudi has been secretly paying gold over to Iran for them to not strike Saudi, you know what I mean?
Right.
So we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, going into the billions. But yeah.
Right. But knowing that China buys 80% of the oil from Iran, and Iran was giving them at a 40% discount, so China could fund their energy needs with discounted oil, and then they was getting oil from Venezuela. Well, we shut off the Venezuela connection, and we've all but shut off Iran's connection.
Right. Yeah, and like I said in that video I did earlier, and just like AB was saying earlier as well, and so were you, is one of the biggest things that we're going to be watching, of course, of this time of all of this is how this is going to directly affect China, because then they're going to retaliate against us in a different way, and then how are we going to then respond on top of that? So that's thinking, ahead of the curve there, but that's what we do here as analysts.
They started. I'm sorry, Bishop.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, if China was to send a fleet escorting oil tankers that belong to them over there to get oil and come back, would we have the nerve to attack that or block it? That would lead to World War III right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the thing that I was getting at earlier. Is because like I said, call your bluff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. Because that's some of the stuff that was going on before. Now you remember back not too long ago when China and the US was going back and forth putting tariffs on each other. They went from 50 to 100 and it went over 100, and they were going back and forth. It's like they sit back and they waiting to see what you're going to do. They know that they getting 80% of their oil from that spot right there. So in their mind, it's like, I don't give a damn what you talking about. I'm about to get, you're not about to cut my oil because of what you got going on. We don't have no alliance with them anyway. So of course they're gonna do what they want to do, and then they're gonna call your hand. Okay, if you don't like it, do something about it. That's what they're gonna do. And this, I could say a lot, like even dealing with what the Gulf states is doing now about forming these little Mecca alliances is what they call that.
Yep.
But but you got to think, a lot of our allies right now not messing with us for real.
Well, look at what Oman is doing right now.
Right.
I mean,
they're not messing with us right now.
That's right. They're going, you know what? If you guys can't do the job that you said you were going to be able to do, we're going to have to go and jump ship.
Exactly. And that's exactly what a lot of these countries are going to do. Because we've sat here, I ain't going to say we, I'm just saying the administration.
Sure.
Basically talk shit to all these allies for months now about what they didn't do, what they ain't going to do. They paper tigers, this, that, and the third. I don't really want to fuck with you, blah, 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 blah. That's what they did. And they've been doing it. So now we got this situation here where now you giving these countries, okay, I'm gonna give you 48 hours to decide whose side you on. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard for somebody to really take your side when you've been shitting on them for months.
And it's hard also when you're also giving the ultimatum as well, rather than you're actually on the worst side giving the ultimatum rather than being the person that, or the side that didn't give the ultimatum.
Right. This oil is way bigger than a lot of people think, because without oil, you basically, your country basically gonna fold.
Correct. That's right. That's 100,000% correct.
And there's no country that's actually straight clean energy that they don't need it. None. So everybody needs it. And I've seen somebody comment over on one of the things that said that Trump said to come to the U.S. and get the oil. Not everybody come here and get oil here. We already running a structural tank bottom as it is because we're giving out oil and not replenishing the oil that we're taking.
I'll get the numbers for you right now.
That's the reason why your gas is sitting where it is now, and it could be substantially higher if they didn't tap into those federal oil reserves. So, even though we can supply our own oil, yes, but we also get oil from these other nations as well. Canada being one of them that we're gonna jump into in a few minutes. Now you say, okay, well, what about Venezuela? Okay, yeah, you did go over and take their oil and their gold, but you still got to. that's a heavy crude, thick, like mud. You know what I mean? So you need lighter oil and the proper refinery to be able
True.
That's right.
to break that down to where you're
No.
able to use it.
And real quick, AB is 100% correct. For instance, the oil that we have now taken advantage of or taken from Venezuela, for instance, we can't refine that. We actually only have about one or two, I think, refineries in Texas specific that can deal with it. But realistically, we don't have the infrastructure to actually refine this on a large scale. So unfortunately, that's why you see us selling that oil to China, essentially, because they're the ones built on an infrastructure level to deal with that. Now, quickly, what you were talking about with the oil reserves, I looked it up, and yes, it is very low. It says the Federal Reserves are very low, and it's been falling rapidly. According to the newest EIA weekly petroleum status report released today, August 26, 2026, covering the week ending August 21st, the SPR is continuing to a steep drawdown. The immediately preceding official reading was 29.4 million barrels on August 14th, down from 413.3 million barrels on April 3rd. That means the U.S. has already burned through roughly 120 million barrels, about 29% of the Federal Reserve, in just over 4 months. So, for perspective, in 2010, peak was 727 million barrels. Then at the end of 2021, was 594 million. That's right, kind of like in the smack middle of COVID. Then end of 2022, 372 million. Then the end of 2025, we actually had an increase there where it went up from 372 million to 413 million. And then April was still about the same. And then August, just a month later, essentially went down by 29%. So at the recent pace, it's striking. It fell from 340 million on June 12th, 300 to 319.5 million on July 3rd, to 304 million. 0.8 million or 304.8 million July 31st, and then down to 294 or 293.4 August 14th. So that's just a humongous, you got to hit you with actual facts of what's happening. I know like people want to live in denial and be like, no, we've got our shit's right up to the tanks, to the tank tops. And listen, that's not what's happening right now.
No, absolutely not. And that's like I said, that's what's been keeping the gas prices kind of steady.
Correct.
Where they are right now. Like, yeah, it'll fluctuate a couple cent here and there. You know what I mean? And it's usually like right around 50 cent here lately.
If we didn't touch the Federal Reserve, if we didn't touch it, that shit would be $7-8 a gallon at this point.
Right.
Right. But yeah.
So that's, but I think though, like dealing with that, like you just said, a lot of people don't know anything about that. So they're thinking that, okay, yeah, gas did go up a little bit. It didn't skyrocket. So we're still doing good, not realizing what they're doing on the back end in order to facilitate that. But you're just using your oil right now. You know what I mean? Because now you got an issue with Canada that we're getting ready to jump into, which can make this situation a whole lot worse than Iran. So on August 20th, Canadian officials were saying that a trade agreement with the U.S. was very close to being done. And, they had an agreement before that President Trump had did with Canada and Mexico, and then that ended up getting played out. And then now they're trying to come up with something new. Now, these negotiations were discussing a deal that could lower tariffs on Canadian vehicles from 25% to right around 15%, and reduce American steel and aluminum tariffs from 50% down to 25%. Then the talks collapsed. And by Saturday, 50% U.S. tariffs were in effect, and roughly $20 billion worth of Canadian imports. Now, AP reports that more than 550 different Canadian products are affected, including consumer and agricultural goods. And then Monday, things escalated again because President Trump threatened to raise tariffs on Canadian cars, trucks, automotive parts up to 50% beginning January 1st of 27 if this dispute is not resolved. So that 50% automotive tariff is currently the threat for January 27. Now, it's not yet the current tariff that's going on right now. That's exactly the type of distinction that we want to make right now because a lot of these headlines say two different things dealing with that right now. So we're going to put the truth out dealing with that. But a lot of people ask, why did these negotiations collapse? And there were several disagreements. You had vehicles, steel, aluminum, and the rules determining how much Canadian and North American content qualified for tariff exemptions, and larger questions surrounding America's trade relationship with China. Well, I mean, with Canada, excuse me. Canadian Prime Minister Carney said that some of the U.S. demands went beyond simple tariffs and intruded into Canada's ability to independently conduct trade and protect elements of sovereignty and domestic policy. And the United States argued that Canada has maintained unfair barriers against American industries and wanted more production moved to the U.S. That is now become more of an argument over the actual percentages of that. And it's turning into the question of what should the economic relationship between the U.S. and Canada actually look like, because these two countries spent decades building supply chains across the border with each other. And a vehicle may cross that border multiple times during production, and you have some stuff that's done in Detroit, for instance, that goes up to Canada, stuff done up there, they bring it back down here, have different stuff. So it goes back and forth because it gets raw material from both countries. And so like I said, once it goes back and forth across the border, it becomes part of that little engine that they have there, as to how these cars are being made, especially GM. GM sends a lot of cars up to Canada because they have factories there. Certain things get put on there, and then they ship back to the U.S. and stuff gets it gets finished here. Honda also does the same thing. They have Honda plants like over in Ohio, for instance, and they put certain things together there, but then those vehicles are shipped over to Canada, and certain things are done there, and then they're brought back. So that's another big thing. So who actually pays for this U.S. Canada trade war for real?
Good question.
Now we're taxing another country, but that ain't exactly how these tariffs work, because the tariff is generally collected from the importer bringing the product into the United States. So they charge higher, they pay it, they of course take that product, shoot the price up to basically make their money back for what they had to pay. So the end result is the consumer is who's paying the tariff because they're paying higher rates.
Of course.
Now, so is Canada actually being punished?
To an extent, but who is actually at the end of the chain paying for it at the end of the day? It's the consumer.
Exactly. So now you have Canada, and they say that they're going to make retaliatory measures that are expected to begin September 8th. And a lot of their earlier statements promise dollar for dollar retaliation against the U.S. Measures. Although Canada officials now say that they may use a more strategically target tariff rather than simply copying every American tariff one for one, but additional details are expected from Ottawa. And that means that this particular part of the story isn't finished yet. Because there's still time for negotiations, yes. But if either side backs down, then escalations can be some self-reinforcing. America raised their tariffs, Canada retaliates, America responds, Canada responds, they go back and forth. You know what I mean? Until it gets outrageous all over again.
Yep.
This is our neighboring country, though.
True.
Our neighboring country. And we get a lot from Canada, including oil that we get.
Yeah, electricity.
Right. And electricity up in the northwest.
Oh yeah,
corridor
they
up there.
basically charge up the entire northern part of the United States. Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff to think about because, like you said, over all these years, Canada and the U.S. has always been neighbors to where they traded amongst each other. They've done work amongst, you know what I mean, between each country. It was more, yeah, that too.
Yep,
It was
natural gas, potash.
more stable. You know what I mean? Now it seems like everything is like in an uproar. You know what I mean? Kind of seems like for real, other than Israel, which I ain't really counting Israel, we're slowly becoming where, how can I put this? You know how, Mike, you always said America first? Remember you always said that?
Yep. And then I was like, America first? Nah, now it's America only. You know,
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
ideology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly where we're going to, because it seems like that we're pushing it to the point that we're going to be on our own island by ourselves, and everybody else is just going to be doing whatever they do, and we just going to be sitting here.
Well, with these kind of plays that we're watching happening, yes, because now we're starting to see the U.S. dollar really be weaponized right now, in particular, in the globe, obviously. It's one of our biggest strengths. So, of course, you know, the Trump administration is going to play to it to an extent within war, because warfare is not just on a military front. It's also on an economic front, and it's also on a psychological front, not only with the enemy, but with your own people. It's crazy, bro. It's very deep how deep war goes.
Mm-hmm. What you got up there, Aaron?
Well, let me give a little background first. Canada and Mexico under Biden felt they were seeing the end of the United States as an empire and our money being the world currency. So Mexico tried to join up with the BRIC alliance. Canada was riding the fence, and when I give some statistics to you, you'll understand why he's riding the fence. They spent half their money on Chinese yuan in case China beat us economically, but they still bought a certain amount of American dollars. And when Trump got into office, they started leaning toward more trading with China and other people, and that pissed Trump off. And he said that he's going to put sanctions on them and bring them back into the fold. So that's part of what the complaint is of them not being allowed to trade with the world. Now, here's the statistics. Canada for decades has enjoyed living on both sides of the trade thing. When they traded products into the United States, they came in here with no tariffs on them. So they made maximum dollars, and they came in cheap to try to compete with our businesses and hurt our businesses. And then when we tried to send agricultural products and stuff back to their country, they put 10% to 15% tariffs on everything to protect their industries and make their products cheaper for the Canadians to buy and not buy the Americans. Now, the Ontario Premier, and keep in mind, Ontario and Alberta is your two denser populations in Canada. His name is Mark Carney. At midnight on Friday, Carney said that there was no deal at the negotiations between Canada and the United States. By Saturday afternoon, Carney had a better word, and he called it war. And Carney currently runs the Bank of Canada. He's a real smart dude. He used to run the Bank of Britain but of England rather, but he kind of ran it into the ground. He came over to Canada and they made him the lead economic dude over there. Now, if you take in consideration that 72% of everything Canada sells abroad is purchased by the United States, that gives us leverage right there. 72%. 85% of their crude oil comes to the refineries in the Gulf states of the United States. Because those refineries are basically built to crack that heavy crude that Canada sends. Mike, can you put that one picture up?
I was just about to say, yeah, because it goes down all the way from Houston, essentially, back up.
Right.
So here it is. Here's the official map for you guys.
And over to the extreme right, you see where a pipeline comes from Ontario down, and then on the other side, you see another pipeline comes down, and they join at one point and go down to the Gulf states and Texas, where they've got the refineries that can crack that oil.
Yeah, Houston is the main major hub of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we buy 85% of that crude oil. No other nation in the world wants that thick sludge stuff, and they don't have the refineries that can crack it anyway. So where are they going to go to sell that? You know, maybe China might buy it, but now you got to do all kinds of things to get it shipped over there, and we'll put all kinds of sanctions on your ass if you start pulling that mess. Now, the smelters that Canada has for their steel and their aluminum industries, they can create the steel and the aluminum to put in sheets, but because because their smelters run on hydropower, they can't get the energy that they need to make anything with it. So again, they have to ship that to us. Now, we threaten to put 50% tariffs on their goods in case they get into a trade war with us. And basically, our economy dwarfs Canada's economy. Carney was bragging. I saw the reports. He's bragging. He's going to bring the pain. He's going to make us hurt. They can cut off our power. They can do whatever. And you cannot do damage to us without doing double damage to yourself.
Sure, that's
you cut off the
objective.
power to us. If you cut off the automotive supplies to us, you cut off the oil, those entire industries in Alberta as well as Ontario is going to be massive unemployment that I don't think they got an unemployment system there.
No, they would have to chop off their own arm essentially
Right.
to,
Right.
you know,
Now,
I mean, do this. So yeah,
Carney understands that our debt right now, that $40 trillion is so massive that that's our Achilles heel. All of our enemies, Iran, all of them. That's the reason why they're trying to play a long game. Carney right now is betting on the midterm elections. He's hoping that the Democrats will win, and he's willing to let Americans get laid off, and he's willing to let higher grocery bills and economic tension do damage to the U.S. population, hoping that public outrage will make them make a better deal with him. Now, he went so far as to hire staff back in February of this year that will fight this war with him. He hired people from the World Economic Forum. Keep in mind, the WEC, they're the ones who pushed the surveillance state and the slave state and things like that. He hired those type of people to help him try to fight this war. Now, he did make a statement at Davos meeting back in January. He said that if we don't have a seat at the table, then we will be on the menu. And he's exactly right. I mean, if he turns against the United States and leans toward the BRIC alliance, there won't be no seat at the table, and the United States is going to devour. We've got leverage. Like I said, 72% of everything they sell comes to us. 85% of the crude oil comes to us. We buy lumber. We get steel and aluminum from them.
well,
If we decide not to buy, they in trouble. And he's talking about he can hurt us. Not compared to the pain we're going to put on him.
no, you're absolutely right. This is going to equally hurt them as well, if not more. on their side. And again, just like you said in your top monologue, Aaron, about how they're just going to end up, doubling down on cutting themselves off, unfortunately, and who can last longer in the situation.
That's right.
In economic warfare, it's all about how long can you outlast the other. That's essentially what it boils down to. Now, obviously, people also know what is the end result of a trade war that doesn't get resolved. It goes into real war. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so this is exactly what we do not want with Canada. We don't want to do that to Canada. There's no need to do that to Canada, right? So we need to have a good relationship with them. And so, unfortunately, yes, there was trade deals that we didn't really have the better end of the deal. Canada had the better end of the deal for decades. But the thing is I don't think we need to overcompensate for that. I think we should just have it fair, just make it fair.
And Carney's also saying right now the economic D-Day is just a diversion from America's own crisis. He said the unprecedented $40 trillion in debt, the surging interest costs that could happen in as early as September, the interest expense that we can't afford to pay. Canada and our enemies right now have concluded that the fastest way to beat America is through the bond market.
Right. But that no one's talking about that, though.
Right.
You know what I mean? In the mainstream
no one's
media.
noticing.
Right.
This whole thing with Canada is the dog and pony show. You look over here, but don't look at what's going on with this 40 trillion and our bond market. And I could go into Japan's market, but I want Bishop to jump in before I go there to explain this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Aaron. I mean, it is. It seems like here lately, all we getting is propaganda.
Yeah.
That's all we getting.
Sure.
Propaganda
Absolutely.
and diversion tactics as to instead of saying exactly what it is that's going on. Yes, can the bond market totally screw us up? Absolutely, it can, and it's gonna show that. You know what I mean? So you see how quick they went from quantitative tightening to quantitative easing, just like in a snap.
Yes.
They're
right back to where we didn't want to be in.
Right, and they're printing this money out of thin air because they're trying to save their ass on this, because they know that, especially with Japan, and they keep taking hits like they're taking, they have no choice but to sell it. It's not because they want to sell it because they're trying to hurt the U.S. They're not. That's not what they're doing. Right. But they're about to lose their ass over there if they don't. So take a look for yourself. That's the
live clock right now.
Right, and you see it ain't stopping. It never does stop.
I'll give you guys the link just in case if you guys don't have it.
This is a debt that you automatically know that will not ever be paid off. Never.
No. The only possible way that I can see us somehow paying this off would be us paying it off in oil and gold. If we raided some other country or something.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, you would have to actually, in order to be able to fully pay that off, you have to get it to the point where it stopped, to where you knew where to pay it off. You see what I'm saying? It's constantly going. This shit never stops. You know what I mean? So this is a debt that you know for a fact that will never, ever pay itself off. It's not. You know what I mean? And all the stuff that we didn't heard, like said, okay, where the tariffs bought in $19 trillion. Okay, where's it at? Why ain't you use that money from the tariff to pay the damn debt if that was the case?
No, that's not going to happen.
You know what I'm saying? So like you hear all this talk, or you hear them pop up these numbers and these percentages and all that. But do you actually see it where it counts? No. None of that. None of that even compensated to where, okay, so where the hell is this $19 trillion at then? Where's it at? You know what I mean? Because you steady cutting programs. You steady going to Congress asking for more money for this and more money for that. So where the fuck is this 19 trillion at? You see what I'm saying? This don't make sense. This is gonna come. I mean, whether we want it to or not, the dollar's gonna crash. We already know it's going to.
Eventually,
it's going to. Right. It's going to crash.
Right. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's possible that things are going to happen.
It's not going to happen tomorrow. You're right. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen way sooner than we fucking think, though.
Absolutely.
Especially if it keeps going like that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's going to definitely happen within all of our lifetime at that rate. Sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. If Japan have to sell out and China has already been dumping, if they continue to dump and Japan has to dump a large amount as well, we're going to be in for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that has to happen right now. You know what I mean? But like I said, we can't keep doing all this other stuff over here, though. You know what I mean? And are they even prepared for something like that to even happen? While we sitting around, you know, dogging our allies and, you know, walking around trying to push our way around on shit that you're not getting your way on. You know what I mean? And then you just finding something else to mess with somebody about. Okay, this one here ain't working out how we thought it was going to work out. Okay, so now we're going to fuck with Canada, and then we're going to fuck with Cuba, and then we're going to fuck with Greenland, and then we're going to fuck with anybody else that we know that we can push over on because we done fucked up over here. Because you thought that you was going to do like you did Venezuela and make this like some real simple shit. Everybody bow down to you and you walk around and strut like you a king shit. Didn't happen that way. Now you're going to take a loss.
Yes.
You're going to take a loss.
Well, everyone's going to be taking a loss. Everyone's going to end up taking a loss, and that's what neither side wants to or willing to do right now.
I'll tell you, the U.S. is going to take a bigger loss, and I'm going to tell you why.
Yes, and that is true.
Because all these allied countries that we quote supposed to been friends with, that we've been shitting on for the past year, are going to make a deal with them because they're not going to lose that oil, and they're going to leave your ass sitting where you sitting by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that objectively would logically follow. Yes. Sadly. Now, all right. So real quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but we are at an hour point. Aaron, do you have something that you wanted to present this evening? I just wanted to ask.
I do.
Okay. I didn't want to pause but I just wanted everyone to be mindful of where we're at. That's it.
Okay. You want me to go ahead and present?
Well, whatever AB wants to do.
I'll tell you what, let me read this little part right here, and then Aaron, then you can go ahead and do your part. So tonight we've examined two different conflicts. One with a adversary, one with an ally. But both reveal something about the changing world that we're living in. Wars aren't fought only with missiles anymore. They're fought with banks, currencies, tariffs, shipping lanes, energy, technology, shipping, supply chains, and access to markets. The United States possesses extraordinary economic power. The question is not whether this power exists, because it does. The question is how that power is used and how our countries respond and what initiated and what's the consequences are to follow that. So with Iran, Washington is battling enough financial pressure that can force Tehran to change course before conflict escalates again. Iran is betting that its position around the Strait of Hormuz gives it enough leverage to be able to succumb that, and hoping that China and Russia takes their back on it to where it eases the U.S. off of them as much as they think the U.S. is going to come at them. And with Canada, Washington is battling the access to the American markets will give it a stronger negotiating hand. Canada is battling with its own resources, integrated supply chains, and the importance of American businesses to give it enough leverage to even try to push back. So who wins these battles? We don't know yet. But there's one thing that we do know. When major economic countries begin using trade and money as weapons, eventually those battles can reach the wallets of us, the ordinary people. Gasoline, food, vehicles, housing, transportation, jobs, you name it. And that's why we're following this. Not to try to create fear or fearmonger, not to follow a political narrative, but to understand what is actually happening before we all feel the consequences. And this is the same thing that we do every week. We pull this information up and we research it and we put it out to everyone because we need everybody to know the truth because we've been fed lies all this time. You know what I mean? And it's about time that somebody actually comes out here and tells the truth. And if that means it takes us three to do it, then that's what we'll do.
Mhm.
But the truth will come out. Like I said, before Aaron does his thing, thank everybody for coming. Like always, hit that like button. That's what gets us out there on this proper algorithm. That is more than any super chat, anything that you can possibly say. All you guys are sitting on here commenting and stuff. Go on both sides and hit that like button.
That's right.
I mean,
Facts.
that's the best thing you can do for us. And it's free. It literally takes you
Absolutely.
1 second to do. Just go on there and do that. And I appreciate you. And I'll see you in 7 days. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, real
Okay.
quick, Aaron, before you do, I just wanted to say one thing because I'm just going to end up closing it right as when you're done, right? So
Okay.
I just wanted to say I think it's very important, about the ideology of where to put your money, where it's going to last, and where it's going to survive the test of times, to be honest.
Mhm.
I understand why people are gambling or investing their money the way that they are currently. If you guys are into those kind of things. But the thing is I look for something very simple. What can withstand the test of times and be there 40 years from now, compounding my money for me? You know what I mean? I think very long term, I'm not looking for a year, each year I'm looking for a 30, 40% gain or something ridiculous. I'm looking for a solid, maybe 7%, maybe 10%, something, in some years I may be taking a loss. That's just the way it is. But over the course of time, what will survive through the course of time, such as gold, silver, stuff like that, commodity that you can hold in your hand and or companies that you own, what will withstand through the worst depression, like the next level depression, right? For us, what companies are going to survive and which ones are going to sell off and go bankrupt or whatever the case is, right? So that's what I understand to be money, right? So right now is not the time to be splurging your money or doing unnecessary trips in your car right now. I mean, I would say, personally, that's the way I've become is very conservative on that aspect of my money. And I think that everybody needs to prepare to live below their means. And every bit of that extra money that you save or have for living below your means and not spending any money, essentially, that you can put it into to grow in an investment of some sort. So anyways, that's all I wanted to say real quick. Aaron, take it away, my man.
Okay. What I want to discuss with everybody today is alternative lighting, and namely today, candles. Okay. Right now, this week, China hackers have broke into the Department of Justice, the Federal Reserve, NASA, and even the Senate. Iran had hacked UK water and UK power. They even shut down a power plant that had been down for 5 days. And to my knowledge, they still haven't got it turned back on. The FBI and the government of UK is warning everybody that the power grid itself could get taken down for 18 months. So if that's going to be the case, and though some people will say, well, I've got batteries for my flashlight. Well, I'm sure the people in Gary, Indiana had batteries for their flashlight too. Now they've been almost 17 days without power. And I'm sure those flashlight batteries are done. Now, what you want to do strategically is save those batteries for emergency. If someone's getting ready to assault you or something at night, you have strong flashlights to be able to see them coming. Save those batteries, use candles. And here's a good do-it-yourself project. This is nothing but a quart jar. And I've got some candles in it. Now, let me explain to you. You can go to the dollar store and buy these candles for about $2. You get 5 of them. Each of those candles burn for 5 hours. So seeing that you got 6 candles in that, that's 30 hours of lighting that you can run at night.
Real quick,
So,
Aaron, I just
I'm
wanted
sorry.
to ask you one thing. Just one thing on that is on those candles, you actually sent me a handful of those candles as well with my bug out bag, right?
Right.
Yeah. No, those things are amazing. They go forever. They're
Yeah.
awesome. Anyway,
Now,
sorry.
you're fine. You're fine. Now, here's a different candle that you can get on Amazon. It's a UCO candle. This is made with paraffin wax. This is made with beeswax. If you ever been in a church that that burned candles, and you looked up at the ceiling, you saw how smoky it was and the soot on the ceiling. They was burning paraffin candles. Beeswax candles, these will burn for 9 hours. You can see there's a difference in the size. 9
That's some
hours,
girth.
5 hours. Yeah. And I mean, this little candle here probably ain't no more than about 4 inches.
Yeah,
But it will,
those are the ones that you sent me, right?
yes,
Yes.
but they will burn for 9 hours. So, and you only can get them in a pack of 3. So, it's 9 times 7. That's about what? I mean, 3 times 9 is 27. But if you go on Amazon, you can buy them by the case. You get, I think it's either 24 or 36 in the case, and you can order the UC candles in. Now, when this burns down, you're going to get a lot of wax runoff. These burn down, they're clean. At the very end, you might have enough wax to equal the size of a quarter, and that's it. I mean, they totally burn clean.
Wow.
But in this little jar here, I've got 12 of the 5-hour candles put back for emergency. I also have a pack of strike everywhere matches
That's
in
good to
there,
have.
and 2 is 1, 1 is none. So those got wet or they failed to work, I have a Bic lighter in there. If the Bic lighter evaporates to where there's nothing left, I can still make sparks with it. And this backs up, one backs up the other.
Totally.
Then you take the lid off. And what I did is I got a PVC fitting and I hot glued it down, and I can take this lid, put it on, and it becomes a candlestick holder.
That's cool.
Now, I've got foil that I would line the inside of that with so I could easily get it out so it don't fill up, but that becomes a candlestick holder. And again, during the winter time, if you got enough candles burning, you can heat a room up. If you set up a micro enclosure and put blankets up against the door, plastic in the windows, or blankets in the windows, you can heat a room if you got enough candles lit. You can also cook with candles. If you can, it's 8 tea light candles with boiled water, and this would be another candle here. This is
Oh,
a
wow.
survival candle, 36 hours.
Damn. 36-hour candle.
Yeah.
And just like Sterling said in the chat real quick, he says, honestly, you won't need all 9 hours of candle at once either. It
That's
will
right.
last for a week if used sparingly.
Right, and that's true. Now, as you can see, you have 3 wicks in here. Each one of those wicks is separated into a triangle in there. Each one of those wicks will burn for 12 hours.
Interesting. So it's like
Now,
like a little.
yeah, but if you light all 3 of them at the same time and set up a couple bricks and put a pot over top of it, you can get water to boil. If you can boil water, you can cook rice, you can cook spaghetti, whatever. But you should have alternative lighting so that you can preserve your batteries for when you really need them. But I feel sorry for the people up in Gary. I don't even know if they've got National Guard up there. From what I understand, if you got a generator, you're having to defend that thing. If you got resources, you got to keep people up off of you. Now, that place was already bad on violence up there. It's one of the worst places to go. But now that the people are severely motivated, and you got to go all the way over to Chicago just to get gasoline, man, I don't know what to say. But
Real quick, Aaron, on that, someone's
yeah,
asking. So Miss Lotus says, where can I get that one? So I'm assuming she's asking about the 36-hour candle. Do
yeah.
you have the name of it?
There's no real name.
Survivor Series Survival Candle. There you
Right.
go.
and you can get that off of Amazon also.
Yeah, it says 12 hours per wick on there. Yep.
Right. And,
Cool.
And that's what you want to do. You want to have this emergency stuff, because I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and
Yes.
not have it. And I'm sure the people up in Gary, Indiana can tell you some stories right now. And I feel sorry for them. But we know that this weather is being anomalous. We're having earthquakes in diverse places like the Bible talks about. People need to be getting ready, because as Bishop said, there's an economic collapse and it's coming. And if you're not ready, I feel sorry for you. The Bible talks about gnashing of teeth. You're going to see a lot of suffering. But I'll stop there.
Do you happen to remember the name of the 9-hour candles?
UCO.
UCO. Okay,
Yep.
Perfect.
That's
There we go.
that's the beeswax, and they burn
Good.
super, super clean.
Perfect. There we go. At least we got those products out there, so everyone knows where to get it. Listen, I can't thank each and every single one of you guys enough. Obviously, we can't do this without you guys. Without you guys donating, hitting that like button, like AB was saying, as well as leaving those live chat comments. We very much appreciate your engagement. Listen, we're going to be back here, obviously, in 7 days for another Wicked Story. This is what we do here. And until then, much love, honor, respect to everybody. Hopefully, you all have a wonderful night. We'll see you guys here very soon. Much love.